Hello, everyone. Happy 11 o'clock. It's 50 Days to 50 conversation, pre-recorded because I decided why stress about the internet. So if I did it while I was still in America, then what could possibly go wrong? I want to just introduce my friend who's coming on by saying, I think that she might have been the first woman president CEO that I ever met in my time at the Arts Partnership. And I just remember meeting her and thinking, wow, this is what woman-led leadership looks like. And I have never forgotten the very first time I met her and how she made me feel. And so I have been very lucky to get to be friends with her, to be mentored by her, to be inspired by her. And now you can be too. So please join me in welcoming my friend, Jodi Duncan. Hi, Jodi.
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Thank you so much for giving me your time. When I sent out the invitation, I thought there is no way towards the end of the year that Jodi's ever going to have time to even give me 15 minutes. So I'm glad you did.
It worked out perfect. And I think you sent that message like at 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah, that was at 5 a.m. I'd already been up for quite a while. I feel like if I send it at 5, I don't look totally crazy. Everything before 5 makes me look insane.
Yeah, I think I got up at around 5:15 this morning.
You responded pretty quickly. So.
And I thought, this is perfect.
Yes.
One less thing to do next week.
There it is. Absolutely. Jodi, let's jump right into the questions. Tell me one or two things that you knew before you turned 50 that have served you well since turning 50.
Before I turned 50, I think one of the things that has stuck with me, and this is one of the things that I always said to my girls when they were growing up, that normal is boring. And I think about that a lot because we get stuck kind of in how we think things should be and what people expect of us, and then get really uncomfortable when maybe things don't fit what people consider normal. So, and they both have, I think, both my kids have taken that lesson to heart, but it's a good thing for me too, because it reminds me that it's okay to not follow the path that people think you should follow.
Yeah, I think it's more than okay. I think it leads to the most interesting, joyful life. Even the pitfalls have some sort of different quality to them because they're not normal pitfalls, whatever normal pitfalls are.
And they make the most interesting stories, right?
It's true.
So when I think of the times that I've done things that I think are so embarrassing or, just failed at something, they make the best, funnest stories. So it's okay, right? Like, it's okay to mess up, and it's okay to not look your best all the time, and
Absolutely.
things like that. So I think it's a good, really foundational thing to think about.
I want to follow up with that, Jodi. Do you feel like you were taught that growing up, or did you just decide that it was who you wanted to be?
Well, I was taught, I think my parents had very specific expectations of all of us based on their experiences and how they thought things should be and people should be and things that happen within your life. And, we had a very traditional household, and my mom stayed home and my dad worked, and I had 4 brothers, and the boys were set. The expectations for the boys were very different than the expectations for me as a girl. And I never fit what I think my mom thought I should fit as the only girl. And so over time, I think I learned to just be okay with not fitting that. And I think I fought against it so much that then as I was raising my own kids, I wanted them to feel very comfortable being whoever it is they ended up being. So I think that's where it came from. But when I was growing up, I felt very much like you're just supposed to follow this path. You finish high school, you go to college, you meet the man of your dreams, you get married, have some kids, live this normal life.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would say I grew up that way too. And it was never said to me, but it was just what I saw. I mean, certainly I didn't have a lot of women in my life when I was very young that I could look at and say, oh, you're doing something that seems totally unlike all the other moms or the other women that I know. So I agree. I feel like we have been lucky to get to some doors were open for our generation that we got to walk through and kind of blow past normal, which I really, really appreciate, because boy, that would have been a tough road to hoe, that sort of traditional housewife thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It just would have been hard for me.
Yeah, me too. I would massively fail at it.
Yeah, I would too. Me too. Okay, next question. What do you know now you wish you could go back and tell your younger self at any point in that time?
What do I know now? I think and maybe this really came true for me more recently. So I would say in my 50s, when I think back to how little confidence I had and how much I let other people kind of define what I was doing as worthy or good, or whether I felt good about it. And I would just completely obsess on any mistakes I made, or not getting something right, or maybe failing at something, or whatever it was. I would just think about it for days on days on days, and kind of obsess about it. And as I've gotten older, that's more of an opportunity to kind of learn from, what am I going to do differently, or how could I have taken something away from that would be useful. And then just encouraging, because I see that in women all the time. I mean, they beat themselves up over something that nobody else even gave a second thought to, because it just feels so embarrassing, or you can't believe you did that, or you missed that, or didn't understand that. So I wish I would have known that earlier, so that I would have asked more questions and been more open to people teaching me those things, versus feeling like I had to know everything, or I couldn't ask that question because, oh my gosh, somebody will know that I didn't know what EBITDA meant, or, those kinds of things. So I've gotten way better at allowing myself to not be so embarrassed by maybe not knowing, or always feeling like you got it right. And just pretending that you had confidence, right? I mean, a really good friend of mine from high school said, it was sometime in my more recent years, and she said, I couldn't believe how much confidence you had in high school. And I was like, what? I mean, I had zero confidence in high school, but people see you in a way that's maybe not really what you're feeling on the inside. So that is one of the big lessons, I think.
So two things. One, I wonder if having zero confidence still gave you more confidence than many people who had negative confidence. You know what I mean? Confidence is such a arbitrary word. And boy, high school, I mean, come on, who'd go back to that and there's nothing in the world to induce you to go back to high school because of the insecurity and the uncertainty around all of it. But the second thing I'm curious about is, before you had your job, and I know you were at Microsoft, and I know that then Doug Burgum employed a lot of women and that they had leadership roles. But did you know a female president and CEO before you got your job, Jodi?
I mean, I didn't.
How? So my point in asking the question is, it's great to say today, I wish I could go back and say, hey, it's okay. But you were literally standing at the edge of a field that had never been walked through in your understanding. I mean, certainly there have been other women CEOs before you, but not in your experience. And so it's no wonder that you felt like what you couldn't do was show up to a table full of men and go, you know what, guys, I don't really know what I'm doing. So who wants to mentor me?
Yeah.
Like that's just not a place to do that. You had to fake it till you made it so that people like me could reach out to you and say, Jodi, I don't know what I'm doing. And you could say, all right, let's talk through it. But if you
Yeah.
didn't have that person, then no wonder you felt overwhelmed in those early years of your job.
Yeah. And I think I was also really clueless about kind of the hierarchy in business and what was acceptable, which part of that, my dad was president of a company and having 4 brothers. So I grew up with kind of this male influence. And even early on in my career, a lot of the men that I worked for would say things like, you don't act like the other women, or you're so different from, and I don't know. I mean, I have some speculation on what that meant, but I remember walking into a meeting once. I worked at an insurance company, and it was a bunch of the VPs were meeting, and it was around Christmas time. And I walked in there and sat down and started talking to him. I didn't think anything of it. And I was probably 23 years old. And afterward, one of them came up to me and said, oh, I can't believe that you just came in there and started talking to us. And there were no women on any of the leadership teams in that company. But really, Great Plains, Microsoft, I saw a lot of really strong women leaders within Doug's organization that I think opened my eyes to what the possibilities were. I don't know that I saw myself in that role at that point, but I think that was a good way for me to just kind of see what is possible.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's not like I'm talking to a 95-year-old. You're not much older than I am for us both to sort of say, yeah, you're a trailblazer in this community. And what's, I think, maybe most shocking is that you are still one of the few female president and CEOs. And that's a bigger issue to me, actually, than that you were the first that you knew and the first that I knew, because I've known you for 12 years. There should be a whole lot more.
Yeah, there's been such little progress. And I think that's one of the reasons that we got involved in Lady Boss and, trying to figure out how can we help elevate women or help get them into some of those positions. But when I look at the statistics for Fortune 500 companies, the growth has been minimal. And then when COVID hit, it even slowed down more.
Yeah. And
then things that my kids go through, and they're 25 and 28. I forget how old they're. Even when they go through a lot of the same things that I did, and it's shocking to me that stuff still goes on. It's just so bizarre how little progress that we've made as a society in regards to how women are seen and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, it is shocking. All right, we're going to ask last question. What have been one or two of the most joyful aspects of your life since turning 50?
The most joyful aspects. I think letting go of some things. And, my history. I've been through a lot of things. I got divorced when my kids were, I had a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old. And the level of judgment that was thrown at me and having to work through a lot of that. So much of that now slides off my back. And with different trainings and different things that I've been through, one of the most valuable things I learned is through Crucial Conversations, they talk about the story I'm telling myself is
oh my gosh.
blah, blah, blah. I use that all of the time. And I think that it is so relatable from just a personal level, because one of the things that I've had to understand is something that I do, and and maybe say or do or behave in a certain way, someone else can perceive that completely different than it was intended. And the story they tell themselves is completely different than what I'm thinking or feeling. And I think that's been hugely, hugely valuable. Another thing, I just heard a quote from Michelle Obama, I think it was yesterday, that she was talking about how sometimes great gets in the way of good. And I thought that's such a smart quote, because sometimes the way that we think we have to have everything perfect, or we have to have every single aspect of something figured out before we do it. Sometimes done is better than perfect. And I think that's a good cornerstone for just whether it's business or really anything that you're into. I think it helps to remember that it doesn't have to be perfect before you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that does come with age. And just to wrap this up, I think about your friend telling you how much confidence you had. That's the story that I'm telling myself example. Your story might have been, oh my gosh, what if everybody sees how insecure I am? And her story was, God, if I could just have a little of Jodi's confidence.
Yeah,
Same
exactly.
Exact encounter. Look at those totally opposing viewpoints.
Yeah, exactly. There's a quote, see if I can remember it. Have you read the book, The Untethered Soul?
No, but I feel like I know of it.
So in this book, it talks about how the voice in our head and what the voice in our head is meant to do, and that we all have this voice in our head. And when I started reading that book, the first probably 2 pages, it talks about this, and I thought, oh, I don't have a voice in my head. And then the book says, if you're saying I don't have a voice in my head, that's the voice that you're talking about. So anyway, but there's a quote in there about the voice in your mind isn't you're the one that's hearing it. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting too. Like, it's just an interesting way to think about. Yeah. You're hearing that and deciphering what that's trying to tell you. But that book is a great book I think for women to get out of their heads a little bit and understand what's going on in their mind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I need a book for my trip, so maybe I'll go and run and grab it.
It's a short one. It's a good read.
Okay. All right. Well, Jodi, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight, and mostly I appreciate your friendship throughout the years that we've known each other. I just think you're fantastic.
I feel the same way, Dana.
Thanks.
We need to see each other in the new year.
I know, we will. You're on my list of reach out to and find a time to meet. So if I reach out in early January, maybe I can see you in August.
That's about right. That sounds good. Well, you have a great trip.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody else.
Merry Christmas.
See you tomorrow. Thanks.